As of the time that I'm filming this video, tomorrow is Halloween. And what better way to celebrate the peak of spooky season than discussing the potential outcome of this upcoming winter season. In today's latest update to the evolution of our winter forecast for the winter season of 2024 to 25, we will be going over some considerable changes since our last update as well as what has stayed the same. We will be going over all of this and more in today's video, all coming up in just a bit. Alright, now starting off on our first forecast map here, we're taking a look at our temperature anomaly forecast map. And if you're not familiar with what this map is designed to show you whether your temperatures are looking to stay the same, looking to be above average or below average this season. So we're going to start off there for portions of the north there in that light blue region. And what this light blue region means is slightly below average temperatures. We're expecting that you're going to be seeing slightly below average conditions temperature-wise for your winter season. So slightly cooler conditions are not going to be anything major. It's not going to be far colder there. This is just a slight change in the negative direction. So we're seeing slightly cooler conditions, maybe 1 to 5 degrees below average, which may not sound like a lot, but it can put a little bit of a noticeable change. So this is just a slight change in a decreased direction. Now headed up there north there, we see that dark blue region. This is your below average area. So this is where you're going to start to notice a pretty big change in your temperature. Now, in this area, we see very cold conditions every single winter, despite the temperature anomaly. We usually see a lot of negative temperatures within this region, and this is pretty far north, and there's a lot of action with the jet stream that brings a lot of those colder air masses down from the north and keeps things pretty chilly here during the winter. Now this winter, I am expecting you to be maybe about 5 to 10 degrees below average consistently. Now of course, you will see warm-ups throughout the winter. We do see systems that will bring warm fronts and warmer air advection from the south, but overall I do believe that it's going to keep things fairly cooler throughout your winter season, keeping things pretty chilly and overall a lot colder than usual. Alright, now moving down south, we do see that light orange region there, stretching from portions of Southern California all the way up into portions of New England. Now this region is indicating slightly above average conditions. So much like the slightly below average conditions there to the north, this is a slight change, but this time it's in a positive direction. So we're expecting a little bit warmer. So again, maybe 1 to 5 degrees above average, nothing too significant for your winter season there, but overall you will notice a trend in the positive direction, slightly warmer overall. Now this can put a little bit of a damper for those areas in this region that typically do see snowfall. While this would have a minimal effect on your snowfall, it could still affect it, leading to some slightly below average snowfall overall, and we will get into that more on our snowfall anomaly forecast map. Alright, now moving on to our final region on this forecast map, we're taking a look at that dark orange region there. This includes portions of southeastern New Mexico and western Texas. Now these areas usually stay pretty warm during the winter, much like the other areas to the south, but overall this winter I do believe that this heat is going to be held here due to a lot of high pressure action. We're going to see a lot of that warmer air being locked into the south, especially around this area, which I do believe is going to be leading this area to see above average temperatures throughout the course of your winter season. So again, we're looking at around 5 to 10 degrees above average for this area. I think that's what you're going to be seeing throughout much of your winter season, and overall I think it's going to keep things fairly warmer for your winter season. Alright, now moving on to our next forecast map, this is our precipitation anomaly forecast map. So overall, we're going to start off in this light green region here to the north. Now this area indicates slightly above average conditions. So this is expecting slightly above average precipitation for these areas in the light green region. We have one over to the west for much of the Pacific Northwest there, stretching from portions of northern California over into western Montana. And we also see another widespread region there, stretching from portions of the Dakotas all the way down to portions of the central United States near Kansas, and then up through portions of the Great Lakes and into the Northeast. So again, with these slight changes on our maps, we're not expecting too much of an extreme change, but overall we are expecting some increased wet conditions for your winter season for these areas. Now moving on to our dark green region there, we do see areas west of the Cascades are in that above average precipitation there for that dark green, and then we do see over here for portions of the Midwest and Great Lakes a dark green region there for above average precipitation. We are also expecting above average conditions here, again through the influence of that jet stream, but this time it's going to be through the form of troughing in the east. So we are also expecting a lot of systems to come down through that dip in the jet stream through here. It's going to keep things very wet through here. We're going to see that influence from the Great Lakes. They're very warm and moist right now, and that's going to keep a convective process going where the warmer air rides, adding to the process of precipitation, and it's going to keep this region very wet, especially off around the Great Lakes. But we're also seeing storms rise up off of the Rockies through a process of least cyclogenesis. And if you don't know what that means, that's basically a process when the air comes off and down the mountains, adding to a spin known as vorticity. And then we see the formation of low pressure systems, which are storm systems, and those are going to move up northeast through this region into the Great Lakes, adding to that precipitation pattern, and it's going to keep things very wet this winter, keeping things very active, and a lot of precipitation is expected for this region. Now moving on down to the south, we see that yellowish region there. This is our slightly below average conditions, so this is a slight change in the negative direction. We're expecting this from portions of Southern California all the way throughout the southeast. Now Southern Florida is typically dry around this season, so I don't think we're going to see too much of an influence on that. Plus that's further south in those tropics, so we're really going to see a lot of that moisture, keeping things pretty typical. Again, not too much precipitation, but we're expecting average precipitation for those areas. But a lot of the southeast here that typically does get a fair amount of precipitation, not too much, but we're expecting slightly below average conditions. So you're not going to be going into a drought or anything like that, but you might notice a slight decrease in your precipitation than what is typical for your winter season. Now we also see a darker region here in the similar area of that warmer region that we talked about, those above average temperatures. We're expecting this to also be below average precipitation. So this is going to be a warm and dry region here for portions of southeastern New Mexico and western Texas. These areas are expecting rather dry conditions, and this is going to be a below average region, so you are expecting a lot drier conditions than what is typical for your winter season. Again, we're going to see that ridging over here for this area, locking in a lot of that high pressure, keeping things dry to that drier desert air down to the south there, moving in from Mexico and coming up north and keeping things relatively dry and overall warmer. All right, now moving on to our next map. This is our snowfall anomaly forecast map, and this is where those changes I talked about at the beginning of the video come into play. So with that, we're going to start off in the light blue region. This is your slightly above average snowfall region. Now you'll notice how this corresponds with both of the maps that we talked about before, and this is due to snowfall being influenced by both temperature and precipitation patterns. So you'll notice for the Pacific Northwest, we do see slightly above average conditions for snowfall. Now this area typically does see a good bit of snowfall each winter season, but I do believe this year we'll see even a little bit more than what is typical in your winter season, and this is due to that colder air up here for the north, as well as that slightly above average precipitation. That's overall just going to lead to a bit of a snowier pattern. Nothing too crazy there, but overall pretty more active. Now we'll see here for the east, this is where things start to change up. So I did bring this down more to the southwest a bit into the Great Plains, and this is due to that least cyclogenesis process I explained before. This is going to be leading to some active systems being brought up off of the Rocky Mountains and into the Midwest. So we'll see a bit more snowfall, I do believe, for these areas this winter season, keeping the Great Plains kind of active when these systems do come through. So I do believe an active precipitation pattern here is going to come through this area, and obviously with some slightly colder conditions this winter expected for those northern areas, I do believe we're going to keep a pretty active snowfall pattern for these areas, and overall slightly above average. Now moving on to that darker blue region, we see two regions again, one west of the Cascades and one over there for the Midwest and Great Lakes. Now we're going to start off in the Pacific Northwest, and this again is just due to that active jet stream funneling in that moisture and keeping things going with that orographical lifting off of the Cascades. This is just going to keep a lot of snow funneling into this area, and overall I do believe you're going to see above average snowfall for these areas, including those northern Cascade Mountains. Now off to the east, we did bring this region down further southwest. If you go back to my last winter forecast update about 2 to 3 weeks ago, we did see this was further east for the Great Lakes. I did bring this down southwest. I do believe a lot of these areas are going to be a bit more active for snowfall. We see all of Iowa being included in this. Overall, a very snowy winter for these areas. And also, we're going to take into influence the lake effect snowfall. Now, I have mentioned this in my previous forecast, but we do see overall that these areas are expecting warmer lakes this season. Now these lakes have been baking all summer long, and the fall has been above average temperature wise too. These lakes have had a long time to steam up and get very warm, and that leads to a convective process. Once colder air rushes down over the Great Lakes, that influences the convective process of clouds forming, and then those dumps snowfall along the Great Lakes areas. Now these don't typically last too long offshore, but I do believe for some of those areas, including Lake Erie and overall up into Lake Ontario, I do believe these areas along the coastline are going to see a lot of snowfall and even above average snowfall this season due to that influence. Not only that, but we see the active storm systems coming through this area. I just believe that's going to keep a lot of things very wet and very snowy this winter for those areas. Now moving further south, we do see for portions of the southwest, we do see slightly below average conditions for that yellow region. And you may be wondering, well, this is the desert. Why are we talking about this? Well, these areas typically have higher elevation areas that do see a significant amount of snowfall each season, despite its location in the southwest. In this area overall, I do believe with the warmer and drier conditions, I do believe we're going to see a slight decrease in your snowfall overall. Nothing too major, but I do believe that a slight decrease is what we're expecting for portions of those southern Rockies and a lot of those southwestern mountains there for much of the desert regions. I do believe we're going to see slightly less snowfall overall. Now, this is where things get a little disappointing because a lot of you likely live within this region to the east. We do see another yellow region here. Of course, not all of you, but a lot of you probably live along the east coast and in these high density population areas. And unfortunately, I do believe that these warmer conditions that are expected off to the east are going to lead to a slight decrease in your snowfall. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to see any snowfall. That doesn't mean you're going to see far less snowfall, but I do believe overall we're expecting a slight decrease in your snowfall this winter season. And you may be wondering, well, what's influencing these warmer conditions? Well, we are taking a look at that QBO pattern. This is in a westerly phase. And right now we're also seeing a negative PNA pattern kind of stay consistent. And I do believe that's going to continue into our winter season. This is going to keep the eastern United States a little warmer this season. And I do believe that's going to lead to an influence. Not only that, but for the coastal areas that see snowfall, we are seeing that the Atlantic is a lot warmer right now than what is typical. And that's going to lead to a lot of the surface being warmer near the coastal areas, overall leading to kind of a lack of snowfall than what is typical. All right, now moving on to our final forecast map, we are taking a look at our overall forecast map for this winter season. And this map is designed to show you a generalized region that you're going to belong to for this winter, based off of the patterns that we talked about in this video. So we're going to start off here for the Pacific Northwest, and in here you see a dark green region. And it's a pretty simple region. Overall, I'm expecting very wet conditions for these areas in this region. So this includes a lot of the lower elevation areas below the Cascades and a lot of the Rocky Mountains off to the east. We just see a lot of wet conditions due to that jet stream and the overall active precipitation pattern that I'm expecting to influence this area. Now, around this region in further south, we do see a white region called mountain snow. And this is pretty typical in my winter forecast. I don't want you to think that I just copy and paste, but this is a pretty typical region. There's nothing really else to say about this region. Just a lot of snow, and especially for those northern areas this winter, we are expecting a lot of snowfall. So overall, mountain snow, a lot of the influence from the higher elevations are just going to keep these areas very snowy, and overall just a winter wonderland. Now, further south, we do see occasional precipitation indicated by that light green region there, and this is going to be a further south extension of that wet region. I don't believe it's going to be as active as the north there. So we do see, at times we could see the jet stream dip further south into these areas, including San Francisco, and moving up into Nevada and portions of Utah and southern Idaho. But overall, I do believe it's going to be occasional and not that often. Not as often as up to the north there, where we're going to be seeing a lot of precipitation come through. All right, now for the entire southern United States here, we do see warmer and drier overall. So this is a very widespread region, and I'm sorry to kind of include you in a giant region, but it's really what we're expecting for your entire winter season. So we are expecting warmer and drier for this season. Overall, just warmer conditions and drier overall. All right, now moving up there just to the north, we do see a pink region called mixed. Now, this doesn't mean you're just going to be seeing mixed precipitation, but what this means is you're going to be seeing mixed forms of weather. So this is going to be kind of a battle between the north and the south, and it's going to be battling each other depending on how high the jet stream is. So if we see a further dip south in the jet stream, you may be seeing some more winter weather conditions, maybe some snowfall, maybe some mixed precipitation, sleet, anything that's winter weather could be characterized with a further dip south in the jet stream. Now, let's say we see some ridging that I do believe is going to be kind of frequent, especially when we see that southeast ridge kind of build up. This could bring some warmer conditions, and overall, you could see some rainfall or overall warmer and drier conditions to the south. So I think for the most part, it's going to be kind of a battle between the two zones. Now, this doesn't just mean for precipitation. This also means for temperature. It's really going to be a hard region to characterize, but overall, I think it's going to be kind of a battle between the north and the south weather-wise. Now, further northwest there, we do see active storm development, and this region is going to be characterized by that Lee cyclogenesis process that we talked about coming off of the Rocky Mountains. We're going to see a lot of that low pressure system development come off of the Rocky Mountains and then move up northeast into the Great Lakes region. So this is going to kind of be the birth region of a lot of winter systems that are going to come through. Not all of them, but a lot of them are going to be through this area, and I do believe that we're going to see some pretty active precipitation and storm patterns for this region. Now, further north, we do see a purple region there called frigid. This is pretty typical for this region, but I do believe this winter, characterized by those slightly below and below average regions, I do believe overall it's just going to be very, very cold this winter. And I do believe frigid is a very decent name to call this because it's just going to be really cold this winter. And I do believe that's going to be the majority of your winter season. All right, now further east there, we do see a dark blue region called winter storms. This is going to be an active precipitation pattern due to 3 different factors. So we obviously see the troughing that's supposed to bring down those winter systems from the north, but we also see a lot of those winter systems developing off of the Rocky Mountains, moving up into this area. And then we also see the influence of lake effect snowfall off to the eastern side of those Great Lakes, and that's going to bring overall a lot of snowy conditions, a lot of winter storm type conditions, and I do believe it's just going to be a very snowy region here. Now, this doesn't mean that you're going to see snowfall every day, every week. That's not what I want you to think this region is. This is just saying that you're going to see increased winter storm activity throughout this region. So again, you're not going to see snowfall every single day or even every week at that matter. But what this means is a lot of winter storms are going to be coming through this area, and I do believe the majority of the winter development throughout this winter season is going to occur around this area. All right, now moving off to that gray region down to the southeast there, we do see occasional storms. Now this region is going to be kind of a branch off of the winter storms region, and this is because I do believe the southeast ridge is going to be an influence keeping things going northeast. So a lot of those winter systems that we'll see in the Great Lakes are going to be moving up further northeast into Canada rather than the northeast and the southern Great Lakes. But that doesn't mean you won't see anything. I do believe you still will see winter storms, but overall a bit less than what the winter storms region is indicating. So I think overall you're still going to see those big snowfall totals coming in, more occasional than anything, but I do believe that it's going to be a bit less than what is typical. Now that doesn't mean for these areas you're going to see less snowfall unless you were in that slightly below average snowfall region earlier indicated, but I do believe overall just a little less of that winter storm activity than what is in the dark blue region. All right, now last but not least, we're moving on to that light green region there. For portions of the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, we are expecting warmer and less snow. So warmer conditions and less snow. Now, what I want to tell you is that this isn't caused by less precipitation. We aren't expecting less precipitation to occur throughout this region because we did talk about a precipitation anomaly forecast map, and these areas are expecting normal precipitation. Now, what is going to be influencing this is going to be those warmer conditions that are expected throughout much of the southeast and along the Atlantic coastline, moving up into the northeast. So not only are we talking about that southeast ridge that's locking that air in, but we are also talking about the warmer Atlantic Ocean sea surface temperatures. Now, this is going to keep warmer air towards the surface along those coastal areas, and overall I do believe much of these areas are going to see slightly warmer conditions throughout this winter that are going to keep the snowfall a little bit less. So it doesn't mean you're going to see no snowfall at all. You're still going to see snowfall this season, obviously depending on what part of the region you are. If you're further south, that might be less of a chance because the further south you get into North Carolina, sometimes you don't see snowfall. But overall to the north there, into portions of New England, I do believe you're still going to see snowfall this season, just a bit less than what is typical due to those warmer conditions. All right, I want to thank you all so much for watching today's forecast. If you did enjoy this video, I would ask you to consider subscribing for more U.S. forecasts free of charge. And I would also ask you to consider following the Weather at a Glance official Facebook page for more inside information and complimentary personal forecasts when you message me on that Facebook page. I also want to give a huge shout out to our channel members, Chris Betty and Jay Case. Thank you so much for keeping the channel going and supporting what we do. And with that, I will see you in the next video.